Thanks, everybody. Charlie went out to find somebody who can share their success story, and instead you got me, so you'll have to sit through the next hour. I'm going to start off with a quick video of our company that was done by a publication called The Verge, and this should give you a little bit of a feeling for what our company looks like from the outside. To anybody who first encounters our company that goes online and Google's Neverware, this is how they're introduced to the company.
When it comes to education, technology is king.
Technology is becoming increasingly important to a whole variety of things that we're doing, and will only be so more going forward. But having said that, technology infrastructure issues are getting to be much more complicated and much more challenging.
For the Family Academy in Brooklyn, there's barely enough budget to pay a part-time IT staffer to keep a few dozen 10-year-old machines running smoothly.
As we all know, budget is a big issue. And one of the things that we were not able to do was to provide our students with new, updated computer equipment.
Many schools have computers nowadays, but they suffer from being, in many cases, pretty old.
Many of our students had to share computers because we couldn't keep enough computers working at any given time.
Enter Neverware, a New York startup that's using age-old techniques from the mainframe computing era to transform barely functioning machines into top-of-the-line supercomputers for a fraction of the standard cost. Neverware uses a set of technologies known as desktop virtualization.
So with Neverware technology, what we're able to do is we're able to push more power and performance to the end computer without having to throw out an otherwise entirely good system.
A single powerful server called the juice box becomes the brains for the entire system. The outdated machines become the clients, essentially dumb screens, with up to 150 computers powered by a single juice box.
Computers no longer need to be individually maintained. Now you have a single master image, you have an intelligent server that can do things like automatically address viruses, and all the school needs to do is maintain that master image, and they no longer have to run around playing whack-a-mole with all the computers that they currently have.
In theory, a 10-year-old machine could run like a supercomputer, and the cost of maintenance is centered around a single set of servers instead of dozens of different workstations all around the school.
Many of the computers we're using here are about 10 years old, and we are now able to make them run like brand new Windows 7 computers. Students definitely notice the difference. The students and I both commented, isn't this wonderful? Every single machine in this room is working.
Before the upgrade, we had like this little netbooks, and they work like really, really slow, or sometimes they just crash on you while you're working. And if you don't have your stuff saved, that was just terrible. But after we got this one, they were much faster.
Students appreciated it, and I appreciated it very much.
Right now, Neverware's major competitors are big corporations like Citrix and VMware. The downside to big corporations like that is that they don't provide their own hardware, which adds another factor to the mess for schools who are looking to cut back on costs. In our reporting, the costs with Neverware's approach were substantially lower, up to 5 times less expensive. That being said, Neverware is facing an uphill battle. It's pitching to a group of clients mired in bureaucracy with long and complex buying cycles. It's also a small, scrappy startup with a 6-man team, meaning it can't possibly offer the same level of customer support as a giant like Citrix or VMware. If Neverware can succeed, the benefits are clear. Schools would spend less money replacing and servicing old computers, meaning they'd have more on hand to bring new technology into the classroom.
When I come in there and I say, hey, we've got this box that we'll plug into your school to make all your old computers go really fast, their first response is, I don't believe you. As soon as we actually demonstrated for them, a lot of the common wisdom about how schools pay for things and budget cycles just begin to fall away.
So far, Neverware has had dramatic success with its pilot program at a school in Brooklyn. If the startup can do the same at the citywide level, it may be the beginning of a transformation for technology infrastructure in schools across the nation.
When it comes to college applications, yeah, a lot more of that a lot more of the work happens online. It's very convenient, but it's only convenient if you have a reliable computer to use. And so it's a deal maker for our students. It really, really is. It's a deal maker.
So that's Neverware in a nutshell. In one sentence, we make a box that we plug into a school, and suddenly all the old computers in the building go really fast and never need to be replaced. Now that video was from a year ago, and at that point, we were one school, 6 people, about $2 million in funding. Now, a year later, we're 13 people, $5 million in funding, and about 60 schools, with over 4,000 computers in the New York City public school system being powered by our startup. As far as the company actually being a successful company, we're still very far away, but we have crossed a number of milestones that are important both personally and professionally to the company, and hopefully provide the basis for the company moving forward to cross the next set of milestones. But first I'm going to speak a little bit about myself and where I come from. So I come from Long Island. I grew up there in a small town called Woodmere. And I was always very interested in computers. When I was 7 years old, neighbors would call up my house to have me come over and plug their little new VCR to the TV, or the new cable box to the VCR to the TV, and I really loved that stuff. It really was just a very exciting exercise for me to do. And as I got older, I always was very interested in technology, but despite that, when it came time to go to college, I went to a business program. So I went to a school called Wharton, which is the business program at the University of Pennsylvania for my undergraduate degree. I was learning how to do a job that would have made me a lot of money, but I was not very happy there. And it took me a while to realize why I was not happy. And that is because when you are trading public equities, when you're trading stocks, like I was doing at my summer internships in the classroom, I felt that I was basically betting on where the score of something out there would go. I would make a bet that the score of this company would go up or the score of this company would go down. But I had absolutely no hand in affecting what the score of that company was. I could go live in the outback and it would not affect what that company produced, what they made, who benefited from that at all. And I really wanted to have an effect. I had many ideas that I wanted to see come into fruition, and that was never going to happen from the outside. I didn't want to sit there betting on a horse race. I wanted to actually have a horse in the race and use my ideas to affect something. So as I was getting ready to graduate, not as part of a class project per se, but as spending my time and using as many resources in the university that I could, I started to explore one idea that had really sat with me for a while, which was, hey, we've got all these computers in this school and at every school that I've been at, and every single year, a few of them slow down, a few of them get old, and we have to wait 4 or 6 years or more to then take all these old computers, throw them out, and then buy a whole new room full of them. So why not take the power of one very strong central computer and split up that power to all the different computers out there in the building? And I felt pretty cool because, I had come up with this awesome idea that no one had come up before about how I could use the power of one central computer to power all the computers. But that was completely wrong. That idea is really old. From IBM in the 60s, they were doing it. It was first called mainframe computing, server-based computing. Nowadays, it's a massive industry called virtualization and desktop virtualization, taking the power of one computer and splitting it up into many. But fortunately, I was really bullheaded, and I thought, well, something's not right here, because if this is such a great idea, why isn't it out there? Why isn't everybody using it? And at first, I tried actually just purchasing these products off the shelf and basically trying to become a systems integrator, but all this stuff was really, really complicated. So that's what helped me identify the need of, okay, there's something really complex here that's preventing schools from benefiting from this. Maybe there's an opportunity there. And as I was getting ready to graduate, I had done enough work that when it came time to graduate, I went home to my basement and I said, Mom, hi, I'm going to be here a little while. And then I just started working on it. And it was a very, very, I want to say it was a lonely experience, but I enjoyed that. I liked being by myself working on something. So the first thing that was fortunate was that I came up with an idea that I personally felt passionate about. And then the second piece that was really helpful was I had the capacity and unfortunately the desire to spend very long periods of time by myself in a very dark room working on something like this. So I was personally predisposed to a certain style of work that was going to be helpful in making this come to fruition. Unfortunately, one, as I'm sure Charlie can share, one aspect that I did not have was I was not very good about reaching out for help. If I couldn't understand a concept, then I wouldn't really get it. And having somebody explain it to me wasn't helpful for me, or at least I didn't believe it was helpful for me. So I spent a very long period of time, 2 years, sitting there by myself, just trying to figure out stuff that other people already knew. But eventually I did get to figure out how this product might work. And at the end of that 2-year cycle, I came away with a product that accomplished 2 things that I was looking to accomplish. Number 1, focus. So Apple was not the first company to come out with a tablet. I mean, barring the Newton from ages ago, which predates me, so I don't really know what it is. But I know that early in the 90s, Microsoft came out with tablets. And what were those tablets? Those tablets were touchscreen devices that had full windows on it. Okay? And it went nowhere, because here was a device that you can do anything you wanted with, but it would do nothing out of the box. You had to basically come up on your own with ways how to do that. And then Apple came out with a device that they said, hey, we're going to only allow you to do 2 or 3 things on this. We're going to tell you exactly how we want you to use it. You won't be able to do anything else. But those 2 or 3 things are going to work really, really well. And the same was true with schools and virtualization. Virtualization technology was such that schools could take this bucket of technology and do whatever they wanted with it. But it did absolutely nothing out of the box. So the banks, who had people who knew how to use it, were great at it. But for schools, they would just plunk it down and it would do nothing. So the first thing is the box had to do one thing really well. It had to make all their old computers run like new. And then the second piece was automation. The schools could not afford to have the IT professionals needed to install this product and to make it work. So therefore, we had to replace the manual work that was done by people with automation. And those 2 themes I've learned, I've seen recur many, many times since I've seen other startups as well. Because what is a product really doing? It's taking something that people have done by hand and automating it. So the travel industry, okay? There used to be something called the travel agent. Now, you can do it yourself. They've automated that function. And the second piece is focus, the ability to take a wide range of things that somebody can do with a product and narrow it down to the 1 or 2 tasks that you want them to do with that product. If you look at many of the best products out there, they really focus on those 2 pieces. And many products at maturity look like they do 20 different things. But if you see how those products started, they all generally started with 1 or 2 very simple behaviors before branching out. So Facebook is one example where now you can pretty much do anything there. But when they started out, you pretty much could post pictures and message people. And you had a profile. That was all of Facebook. So automation and focus was the 2 lessons that I learned about. Great, so I had an idea. I had 2 years of complete isolation. After learning to reintegrate into society, the next piece was to get customers and to get financing. And I went out and I started just speaking to everybody. And eventually I came into contact with a place called Dogpatch Labs, which was an incubator. And networking through there, I was able to get to my first investors. Now, raising money is a lot like dating. If you think of most of the rules that are true with raising money, with dating, they're also likely to be true with raising money, okay? Everybody wants what they can't have. There's nothing more exciting to an investor than being told no. This may also expose my very odd dating practices, so I apologize. Secondly, investors love to see social proof. Nothing gets an investor more excited than seeing other investors who want it. They don't even many don't even need to know what it is. If they know that other people want it, they're already interested. So that was my. Now you would think I learned how to raise money from dating. I actually learned how to date from raising money. And then with customers, it's completely the opposite. You know, customers is really just about being out there and being available. And the first customers that I found were from really just networking as widely as I can and trying to inspire my vision for what I saw of, hey, I can solve this problem once and for all of old computers in schools, trying to infect somebody else with that at a school who was going to then take that idea and apply it at their school. So I want to pause at this point because everything up to here sounds very linear and straightforward, but it was actually incredibly painful. To get to the point that you saw that video at, which was roughly a year ago, from 2009 to the beginning of 2013, there were a lot of very painful experiences and lessons that I had. And from that, I'd like to share basically the who, what, and how of at least what I saw as both effective and necessary in starting a company. So as far as the who, if you want to start a company, the first question I think to ask yourself is, are you passionate about something? None of what I did to get to this point, which again is not yet successful, but hopefully is further down along the path, a lot of this stuff didn't necessarily make sense all the time or feel good all the time. but there was a certain passion and stubbornness that no matter what anybody told me, I was going to be right. So regardless of if I had a good day or a bad day, it was very important personally that I could not stop if I wanted to. So sometimes you don't even need to decide if you want to start a startup. Sometimes you just know that you need to because that's the only way that you're going to be able to express a certain passion. Number 2 is risk-taking. Are you okay with risks? So just to speak a little bit about my risk profile, I volunteered as a firefighter. I've training as a rescue diver, and I messed around with the membership roles in the computer system so that I became the only American Red Cross volunteer who was sent into the Israel-Lebanon war for a very short period of time until they figured out what I did and pulled me out. But the point of all that is that I need that kind of interaction. I need to feel very close to a situation, and I don't have a very good sense of personal risk. But in terms of a startup, it means that if you actually look at looking at the chances of a startup working, which is pretty much 1 to 100 of any kind of success, I'm able to push that aside and basically ignore reality. And ignoring reality is very important when you're assessing what your chances are of success, because they are very, very low. For me, and for anybody starting a startup, which is, again, where the passion comes in, because you need to really believe in what you're doing. And then the other 2 aspects of who you are, passion, risk-taking. So passion comes with arrogance. I would say passion and arrogance are part of the same piece, believing that you're right. So the third one to counteract that arrogance is humility. You need to be arrogant enough to believe that you can succeed and you can be right where nobody else was. You know, if it's such a good idea, why hasn't anybody done it before? But at the same time, you need the humility to believe that you have the capacity to be wrong on individual points. So it's the arrogance and the risk-taking profile to believe that what you're doing is right and that you are going to stubbornly keep pushing forward with that until it's either succeeded or it's cold and dead. But on individual points, you need to be able to be wrong on things. I'm wrong very, very, very often. Ask anybody I work with. But on the big idea, I believe I'm right. And then the fourth piece is more of a skill, and that's you need to be very persuasive. One piece I was not very good at early on, but I had to develop, was the ability to make someone else see things as I see them. Doesn't guarantee that they will agree with me, but they'll at least be able to stand in my perspective, see what I see, and then tell me then, at that point, do they agree? You're going to be persuading a lot of people. You're going to be persuading investors to give you money. You're going to be persuading employees to come join you. You're going to be persuading customers to try a product that does not work. So those are the 4 aspects that I feel really you need to be honest with yourself and think of, do you have the capacity for in order to make a startup, because you're going to have many, many painful days. You're going to have days where you're running out of, I mean, you guys, I'm sure know the Next Jump story about how much grit it required to pull through and to build what you have today, and Neverware was no different. There were a lot of people that came and went. There were a lot of people who did not necessarily believe in the idea, and there are still plenty of people who don't. But despite that, and despite that pain, I was just detached from reality just enough that I would always be able to push forward. And to highlight that, in August of 2011, sitting at the company with all the passion and the humility and the risk-taking and the persuasiveness, we already had a prototype, we had our first few customers, and I realized that the company was comprised completely of the wrong people. And that summer, basically, I let everybody go, and I started all over again. So that was one of many painful experiences, but I never doubted for a second that it would work. So that's the who. Secondly is the what. What's a good idea? My name is Jonathan Hefter, and I make a box that you plug into a school that that suddenly makes all the old computers in the building go really fast and never need to be replaced. Raise your hand if you understand the value of my product. So that sentence took a lot of time to develop, pretty much as much time as the product itself. But that sentence is key, because from that one sentence, anybody can understand what I do and why it's important. So the first piece is, do you have in your head an idea of something that should be? Not something that is today, but something that should be. And it's so apparent to you that that passion that you have constantly compels you to think about it. If you're not obsessed with an idea, you're going to have a hard time. That obsession is a lighthouse out in the distance that you're going to be rowing towards. And without a lighthouse, you're just going to be lost at sea, so to speak, hopping from idea to idea. But with a lighthouse, with an obsession, and the passion to pursue that obsession, you are going to at least know exactly where you want to end up, and that's going to get you through a lot of the really hard times. Now, that idea that you're really passionate about, can you explain it in 2 sentences? So my original pitch was, well, there's a technology called desktop virtualization, and basically it involves a main computer and a lot of little other computers, but you're really using the power of the main computer from all the little computers. That doesn't make any sense. It's true, but nobody can get the value from that. So can you take your idea, can you explain it in 2 sentences? Once you can explain it in 2 sentences, do people get it? Can somebody tell you back why that's important? If they can't, it doesn't necessarily mean that the idea is bad, but it means that you need to think more about what the ultimate value is. Is the ultimate value of my product that a school gets to use desktop virtualization? No. Principals don't care about desktop virtualization. Principals often refer to it as the magic box. One, because it accomplishes a lot for their school, like magic. Two, they have absolutely no clue how it works, also like magic. But they don't care about that. They care that it takes their computers that were slow and it makes them fast. More directly, they care that suddenly all these classes that weren't able to teach before now have computers that all the students can use. That's the value of the product. How we do it means nothing. So can you explain in 2 sentences, do people get it? And this last one is not obvious, but is very, very important. What current behavior that people have is a close analog to the behavior required to use your product? Anybody who's had any kind of relationship to anybody, not even a partner, a parent, a child, a friend, everybody here has the experience of how absolutely difficult it is to change human behavior. People rarely change. And when they do, it's a massive monument to their personal self-determination and will. But chances are you're not going to do it with a website. Chances are you're not going to do it with an app. So short of being able to change their behavior, you need to use a behavior that people already have. Our system uses Windows, at least on the outside. When you turn on one of our products, you get a Windows desktop. Is Windows the perfect system to use for all use cases? I've got enough tech people in this room to say absolutely not. But it is the most popular. So I'm not going to make a judgment on why people are using it. But I am going to acknowledge that it is the behavior that people are used to. Am I out to change Windows? No. I'm out to increase the number of computers that people can use and to make them run better. So that's not a battle I'm going to have. I'm going to acknowledge the behavior people are doing, and I'm going to focus on one very narrow sliver of value, which is the speed, performance, and reliability of the machine. So, to review the what are you obsessed with? Because if you're not obsessed, nothing is going to carry you through all the shit that happens when you're starting up a company. Can you explain your obsession? Can you take your idea and explain the value of it in 2 sentences? Do people get it? And somebody then tell you back why it's valuable? And then how closely can you get that to align with a current behavior that people have? And lastly, the how. So once you've got that idea that you explained, that you yourself are obsessed with, that you're thinking about in the shower, you're thinking about when you go to sleep, it's just fun to think about for you. And you've got it down to a real tight value proposition. It's not going to be enough. The greatest thing to hear is, I've got a great idea, I just need someone to build it. Because everybody has great ideas and they need somebody to build. You're going to have to do the first part on your own. Okay? And the best thing, obviously, is to learn how to code. Disclaimer, I can't. If you can't code, see what parts of the idea don't necessarily require strong technical skills. If you're thinking of a service, like an Uber, maybe you don't need technology at the beginning. If you are going to use technology, start, even by hand with a pencil, actually drawing out the website. Anything short of doing everything that you can do for an idea, if you're leaving some part of it that you can do for the next person, it's kind of lazy. It means that I'm not going to think about what needs to be done. I'm going to leave that to some mystical technical co-founder. Okay? There's a lot that you can do. There's a program called Balsamiq, B-A-L-S-A-M-I-Q, Balsamiq. Okay? That allows you to make a mock-up of a website. You don't need any technical skills. You have an idea that you believe is so great, build it. And the last part of that is when you are building that prototype, as you're getting ready to come out with that idea, focus on as absolute small and narrow a value proposition and a market as you can. The less you need to tackle, the better. So if you can identify a market that's maybe a few thousand people, you can have a much higher chance of catering to their very, very specific needs. The more people, the more generalized their needs, the less special you're going to be for them. But imagine if there's a small community out there that has one very specific need. If you can get 80% of the people in that community to really love that product, you've got a much better chance of them bringing it wider and wider and wider. We have a box that makes old computers for schools go fast. Up until this year, we haven't sold it anywhere outside of New York City, because I'd rather have 4,000 computers running our software in New York City and be important at conversations between New York City principals than I would rather have 4,000 computers spread out across the country where there's never a chance that two people get into a room, one of them mentions our product, and the other one goes, oh, we're also using it. Okay? That's what you need, and the tighter the market that you can focus on, the more likely that's going to happen. A few books that I think are really, really great if you're starting up, or if you're, or really for many different parts of business, but especially a startup. Focusing on startups themselves, I would definitely read Lean Startup. It's a crash course on everything important in a startup, and I would definitely start with that one before anything else. On recruitment, I mean, that next jump, you guys know it's all about the people. Recruitment, I would read Who, W-H-O. I think it's by Brad Smart. We've based our entire recruiting methodology off that book, and it's turned out very well. On marketing, so not necessarily what you're making, but who you're selling it to and how you actually sell it, I would read Crossing the Chasm, which is a fantastic book, and that's basically where I got the whole notion of selling very narrowly. And lastly, on making a product, I would read a book called Inspired, Making Products People Love. And hopefully, with those, you've pretty much caught up to everything I know, other than the pain. If you have any additional questions besides for the contact information that you have over here, my email is jonathan@neverware.com. Please, please, please do not hesitate to email me. Charlie's given me a lot, and to the extent that I can pass it on, I'd be happy to share as much more of my trauma that you want to hear about.